When touring the country, you notice that just about every city has a zoo, and most have a few museums, restaurants, and shops. Not that these things aren't important, but we decided to take on a tour of the most unique things, the truly bizarre things. Things you can only see in that particular area. Sites that you probably put in the weird, wacky, and wild category. Now we take you to Topeka, where entrepreneurship has really paid off. In fact, some of the things we're going to show you are so creative and imaginative that you just have to see them to believe them. Taking a chance can really pay off, as you're about to find out in our first edition of It's All Good on the Road.
When we started this business, I wanted the coffee, right? I mean, coffee is what I really wanted. I didn't get into it to run a retail business. I wanted a great cup of coffee. That was where my real passion lied.
Jeff Taylor and Fred Polzin are the founders of PT's Coffee. If you're a true coffee lover, you've probably heard of them. Their coffee is one of the most unique and flavorful varieties you can find.
We started back in about '92.
At that time, Jeff was still a photographer for the Topeka Capital Journal newspaper.
Moved here from the Northwest, and when I was living in the Northwest, there were coffee carts on the street, there was Starbucks around, and I was familiar with specialty coffee, but when I moved to Topeka, there wasn't any. And so I found myself driving to Lawrence, to a cafe that's in Lawrence called La Prima Taza, and at the time it was the only espresso cafe in the state.
In their case, necessity was the mother of invention. One weekend, Jeff was having a cappuccino at a friend's house when
I started dawning on me that there's no coffee here. I'm driving all the way over back and forth, and I thought, this is crazy. And Fred and I at the time were just roommates in an apartment complex in South Topeka. And Fred was walking out the door to go somewhere. And as he opened the door, I said, Fred, we got to open a coffee shop. And he looked at me, didn't even drink coffee at the time, looked at me like, what on earth are you talking about? And my mind, at that point, my mind was just rolling, you know.
That's where PT's got its start. Fred and Jeff began with a small coffee shop, while both keeping their day jobs.
He'd open it, we had an employee in the middle of the day, and I'd close it. The second year, we'd applied for an SBA loan, opened a second shop and a coffee cart downtown Topeka, and we were kind of on our way at that point.
But that doesn't mean it was easy. Far from it, in fact.
Like most small businesses, we made every mistake in the book. And after 2 years, things were going great in our mind, and then we realized, oops, we just made a big mistake. And we got set back about 3 or 4 years, and then things started going great again, and oops, we made another mistake. And so it kind of happened gradually.
Were there times that you guys thought, oh my gosh, we're going to close the doors, this just isn't working?
Yes, yeah, several times. I mean, yeah. One time we went through, got the loan for our shop, had everything bought, and realized we hadn't budgeted for an espresso machine. We got the counters and the floors and the chairs and tables, but we don't have an espresso machine. Go back to the bank and go, is there a chance we could get an extra $12,000, please? So, after we're all said and done.
After opening more and more outlets, coffee lover Jeff said he realized he'd forgotten why he started his coffee shops in the first place.
But then after about 2 years, it dawned on me, it's like, but the coffee still isn't very good. And I was like, what's wrong? Something's wrong here. And so we started talking about it a little bit. And so we decided, you know what the key is? We need to be roasting our own coffee. If we roast our own coffee, it will be better because it'll be fresher.
So they saved their money for 1.5 years and bought a roaster like the one you see over their shoulders.
This first part of the roast, we're just going to start to express that moisture, get rid of it.
You know, that was going to be the key, right? That was going to be the one that put us over the edge, and we were going to be making great coffee. Yeah, that didn't work.
All right, about 9 seconds, my friend.
After about 6 months of roasting their own coffee, they realized it still wasn't that great. Or, at least to Jeff, it seemed like it should have been better.
And then it dawned on me that just like anything you do in life, what you get out of it is only as good as what you put into it. And that's when I realized that the coffee's no good coming out of the roaster because we're not putting good coffee into the roaster. If I'm buying from a farmer who doesn't produce great coffee, well, I'm not going to be able to make it great by roasting it. And so what I realized is I had to beat the best farmers in the world.
You aren't going to believe where that goal took him. Coming up after the break, we'll take you on a tour that's going to blow your mind. Right before the break, we told you that Jeff set a goal to meet the best coffee farmers in the world. That goal took him all the way to 9 different countries, including some in Central and South America, Africa, Indonesia, and Colombia, sampling coffees all along the way.
Coffee grows on a tree, and trees for this variety for coffee grow best in tropical area. And in between this zone right here is where coffee can be grown. That's why we don't grow coffee in Kansas, is because the climate's not suited to grow coffee. You could plant a tree, it just wouldn't grow here. Or if you grew it inside your house, it would grow, but it wouldn't produce fruit.
Not only has Jeff narrowed the location of great coffee down, he knows each farmer who grows it personally.
But this was our first, what we call our direct trade coffee. It's from Colombia. It's called Finca El Palacio. Luis Aurelio is the farmer that produces this coffee. And he's got 7 kids. He lives on the very top of a mountain in the Huila range of Colombia. And just to give you an idea, to get to his farm, I have to fly from Kansas City to Bogota, stay in a hotel overnight. The next flight to Neiva, there's an in-country flight in Colombia that goes from Bogota to Neiva. The next morning leaves at 6 a.m. So you get a hotel, you fly to Neiva the next morning. They pick me up in a 4-wheel drive truck, and then we drive for 2.5 hours to La Plata, which is the town you see here. It's a small little pueblo in Colombia, in the Huila region. From there, we usually stop and get breakfast, because now we start driving up the mountain for about 45 minutes, at which point we park the truck, and we walk for another hour, because you have to hike, because the truck can't go any further. So you now have to hike up the mountain for about an hour. Once you get to the hiking point where you need to take a break, that's when they bring in the horses, and you go on horseback for another hour to get to his farm.
Seems like a lot of work to find a good cup of coffee, but those who drink it say it's well worth it. And Jeff says it's important to actually see the farms for himself.
And so I know this is one of the best coffees out of Colombia, and we now have a direct trade relationship with Luis, because we're looking for the best coffees we can find. But then again, those are always really small micro lots, is what they are. Because on any given farm, the farm is on a mountain. And so this side of the mountain may be the best side for growing coffee, this side may not. And so if there's a farmer that owns both sides of the mountain, I want to know where my coffee is coming from so I can identify, I want this side, I don't want this side. And that's why you have to really go explore to find out where your coffee is coming from, what variety of tree it's growing on, all these different factors. I think we buy from about 20 different single farms, anywhere from very large farms, where we buy some of our higher volume stuff that might go into a blend or used for a base for our flavored coffees, to single origin, very small farms, like Finca El Palacio, where he owns the equivalent of about 5 acres. And he works the whole farm by himself.
The very best coffees usually do come from a small farm you just mentioned.
They sell between 40 to 50 different coffees now. Jeff says another one of his favorites comes from a farm in El Salvador.
We buy all their coffee, and so we really work closely together. We sponsored his local community soccer team there last year. Bought them uniforms and bought them shoes, the cleats they could run in and stuff. And the uniforms have our logo on it.
Both Jeff and Fred say their company is the perfect size to do what they're doing, since some of the major coffee companies tend to be victims of their own success.
Part of what's happened with another giant coffee retailer we're all aware of is that as they've gotten larger, they've had to buy more coffee. Well, if you think about the way coffee grows, it grows on a mountain. Mountains usually have somewhat of a shape like this, so that there's less coffee at the top where the best coffee grows. So as you need to buy more coffee, you need to come down lower and lower on the mountain. And that's when roasters start having a darker roast profile, because as you get lower on the mountain, there's less individual characteristics to the coffee. It has more of a, what I like to call it, coffee flavor coffee. It's just kind of a flat, it tastes like coffee.
Rather than the caramel or vanilla flavors that PT's has.
And so the bigger companies are at a disadvantage against us. Now obviously they make a lot more money than we do, and they sell a lot more volume, but we'll have better coffee than they will, always.
It's not just their coffee that's considered to be the best. The people they have serving it are too. Every year their baristas place in the Barista Championships. A barista is like a bartender who makes espresso drinks.
3 times second in the United States in the United States Barista Championships. We have won the Midwest 7 out of 9 years, yep. I believe.
And 2 in the top 3 all 9 years.
As we told you at the beginning of the story, Fred was not a coffee drinker. Well, he certainly is now.
I wasn't a coffee drinker, mostly because I'd never been exposed to good coffee. I'd had coffee maybe a dozen times in my life, but it was bad. So I just didn't really have a liking for it. So, and now I can go out on the road and go someplace else to get the coffee, and I sometimes can't drink it because I'm so spoiled, because we really do have great coffee.
Good coffee is sweet. Coffee is supposed to be sweet. You've heard the term bitter associated with coffee a lot of times. That's a lower quality coffee. good coffee should be sweet.
PT's is now roasting about 300,000 pounds of coffee a year, and they ship it all over the United States and Canada.